All right. I think we will go ahead and start. Everyone can hear me well? All right, good. Hello, everyone. I'm Levan Beridze, Consul General of Georgia in San Francisco. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your commitment to making this event possible and express my special gratitude to Ambassador Degnan and Ambassador Bakradze for being here with us to launch this webinar. As most of you know, the Consulate General of Georgia in San Francisco is the first representation of Georgia on the West Coast, which covers 19 states of the Western US, including Hawaii and Alaska. Our Consulate General is committed to enhancing the partnership between Georgia and the states of the Western US through active engagement with the Georgian diaspora, private and public organizations, and of course, the local governments. The consulate aims to further strengthen economic, educational, and cultural ties between Georgia and the Western states by obviously intensifying, business-to-business interactions, people-to-people, and business-to-government connections, including exchange of knowledge, experience, and best practices. Now, you know that this year marks the 30th anniversary of Georgia's regaining its independence. And the last 3 decades since Georgia regained its independence from the Soviet Union marked the development of Georgia into a strong democratic state, a liberal economy, and a reliable strategic partner to the United States. Now, within the development of the economy, Georgia established a robust business environment based on strong innovation and technology ecosystem, fostering growth of startups throughout the country and the region as well. With rapid digitalization across the world, I believe that integration of AI into Georgia's economy and its application across multiple sectors will be crucial for effective and efficient development of the country. Now, today's discussion, we will focus on developing trends of global digitalization and its effects on rapidly developing world, as well as explore the urgency in adapting to the age of technology and information. I think further strengthening of U.S.-Georgia bilateral relations will also rely on the necessity of close ties between the tech sectors of the countries, which in turn drive innovation and productivity. Now, in opening of the webinar, I would like to introduce to you our ambassadors who will highlight the importance of U.S.-Georgia relations and underline the partnership which continues to expand every day. Ambassador Kelly Degnan, who arrived in Tbilisi in January 2020 to serve as the U.S. ambassador to Georgia, has been a key advocate for increasing U.S.-Georgia cooperation and driving the effort of further intensifying the partnership and friendship between the Georgian and American people. During her almost 30-year career, Ambassador Degnan has focused on political and military affairs. She was the Deputy Chief of Mission and Charge d'Affaires in Rome and Pristina, and also served overseas at the U.S. embassies in Botswana, Pakistan, and Turkey. We are honored to have Ambassador Degnan representing American people in Georgia, and certainly honored and pleased that she's joining us here today, despite the huge difference between California and Tbilisi. I would like to also introduce Ambassador Bakradze. He was appointed Ambassador of Georgia to the United States in December 2016. He has a long and distinguished career in diplomatic service. Since '97, he has served in a number of senior official posts in Georgian public service. Prior to his appointment as ambassador to the US, Ambassador Bakradze served as the State Minister of Georgia for Euro-Atlantic integration. In that role, he was responsible for coordinating the government of Georgia's work on implementing key instruments of integration to EU and NATO. Now, I would like to add that I had the privilege to serve at the embassy in Washington under the leadership of Ambassador Bakradze, who I know continues to spare no effort in promoting U.S.-Georgia bilateral cooperation and partnership. Thank you, Ambassador, for being here with us today. Ambassador Degnan, again, it is a pleasure to host you at this webinar, and we all look forward to your opening remarks. Madam Ambassador, please.
Thank you very much, Levan. It's a real pleasure for me to be here, especially to join you virtually in my hometown of San Francisco. and just an indication of the kind of technological innovation that comes from the Bay Area that makes this webinar possible. As you mentioned, the United States has been a steadfast partner to Georgia throughout its independence, its democratic and economic development to date. As we celebrate Georgia's 30th anniversary of independence, the U.S. is very proud to continue to contribute to Georgia's efforts to become a stable, prosperous democracy that is fully integrated into the Euro-Atlantic family of nations. Our strategic partnership builds on the progress that Georgia has already made establishing its democratic institutions and laying the foundations for a dynamic market-based economy. I think what I've seen in the time I've been here is that Georgians increasingly understand that strong, independent institutions are absolutely essential for developing and diversifying Georgia's economy. And it's good to see that the government here is also prioritizing education in order to produce the kind of skilled workforce that is needed for the industries of today as well as for the future. Certainly, we all realize that technology now permeates everything we do, whether it's from a webinar or cybersecurity to ordering a pizza on your cell phone. And Georgians recognize this too. And it's already got a robust startup sector that's busy finding new opportunities and innovative ways to use technologies with support from the Georgian Innovation and Technology Agency. I think by opening the consulate in San Francisco last year, the government of Georgia demonstrated its commitment to building the kinds of connections that are needed to develop Georgia's already very dynamic startup sector. The digitalization process has accelerated in the course of the year and created opportunities for new and emerging markets. You can already see it here on the streets of Tbilisi in the form of contactless payment systems, QR codes, electric vehicle charging stations. They're becoming as ubiquitous as Khachapuri, the fabulous national Georgian dish. So Georgians are developing a technology market that offers rich, diverse opportunities for U.S. business investments. The United States, just to mention a few of the areas where the U.S. government is partnering with Georgia through USAID, for example, we support innovation and technology programs that develop Georgia's information and communications sector and catalyze further innovation in Georgia's agriculture and light manufacturing sectors. We've seen some amazingly creative initiatives as a result of this that have increased production, opened new markets, and stimulated the economy here in Georgia. We also support Georgia's small and medium-sized businesses to upgrade their use of digital tools, including online marketing and digital payments, to increase efficiency and reach more customers in Georgia and beyond. USAID is also supporting the development of modern workforce in Georgia through a recently launched industry-led skills development program. I think this is particularly noteworthy because it pairs with the private sector to establish training programs that are designed to lead to direct employment opportunities. The goal is to train about 5,000 people, incentivize 30 businesses to develop long-term partnerships with training providers using $7 million in cost share from the private sector. This is also designed to ensure that a certain percentage, 35% of the trainees, come from rural areas or ethnic minorities, and at least 45% are women. So by listening to businesses, the government, this program is designed to produce workers who have the skills that industries need now. So I think it's going to be really quite a big change here in terms of developing a more connected workforce. Another example of U.S. support for the tech innovation is a USAID-funded Digitalize Georgia program. which partnered with the Georgian Innovation and Technology Agency to introduce new technology to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. This program connected Google certified photographers and Google certified educators with local businesses who can then boost their digital skills in editing Google Maps, digitizing businesses, creating web pages, working on visualization and analyzing tourism, which is a major revenue source for Georgia. Georgia's desire to be a bridge between Europe and Asia and a regional hub has also got tremendous economic potential, both for Georgian and for foreign investors. Part of the potential comes through this business-to-business partnership, and a good example of which was the recent signing of a partnership agreement between the data analytics companies SAS and SilkNet, one of Georgia's largest telecom operators. Agreements like this show that the strength and the strong US-Georgia partnership continues to grow, including through cooperation that transcends the traditional government-to-government kind of partnership. Partnerships like the SAS-SilkNet one will drive business economic growth across sectors, and we hope stimulate opportunities for other business sectors. So we've seen that American businesses and investors look for a welcoming investment environment, business opportunities, and strong innovation. They want a reliable, functioning judicial system and a level playing field. The United States supports Georgia's efforts to strengthen the independence of its judiciary, as we have for the past 25 years. An independent judiciary, we all know, is absolutely essential to create the kind of business climate that attracts quality foreign investment and fosters innovation, an innovative culture. I'm glad to say that Georgia's political leaders recently committed to advancing additional judicial reforms here, and the United States looks forward to supporting that effort. American businesses also want to know that their data will be safe and secure and that their intellectual property will be protected. I'm happy to say that this year I signed a 10-year extension to the Science and Technology Agreement between the United States and Georgia, expanding potential research and development opportunities and providing needed protections for intellectual property. Georgia also this year signed the Georgia-US Memorandum of Understanding on 5G security, demonstrating its commitment to safely develop its 5G next generation telecommunications infrastructure. So you can see there's tremendous potential for growth, development, and innovation here in Georgia. And the US Embassy is here to help connect American and Georgian businesses. I look forward to continuing the economic success that we've seen and our strong engagement in this area. Didi Madlova, thank you very much again for inviting me today.
Ambassador, thank you so much. It's truly amazing how many programs we have together and how many things we're working on to make sure that our relations, our partnership and our friendship kind of grows and intensifies. So we are very grateful for the work that you do in Georgia, and we're looking forward to working with you to increase that. For sure. Again, looking forward when you visit California again, looking forward to hosting you at the consulate here. Thank you very much. Let me ask Ambassador Bakradze, if you will.
Thank you very much, Levan. Yes, thank you very much. I hope you hear me. And congratulations with this event. And I would like to thank you, Ambassador Degner, for your everyday work and support to Georgia's democratic and economic development, as well as today for your participation and comprehensive overview of the U.S. ongoing support and programs across Georgia's economic sector. This year marks 103 years of the first Democratic Republic of Georgia, as well as 30th anniversary of restoration of independence from the Soviet Union. And few of us could have imagined that just 3 decades later, our small country of 3.7 million people is now a key U.S. ally and linchpin of peace and democratic stability in ever unpredictable region. And the United States was one of the first countries to recognize the independence of Georgia, and over 15 years later, in 2019, we have signed the U.S.-Georgia Charter on Strategic Partnership that has elevated our standing cooperation to a substantially higher strategic level. And during the past 3 decades, the U.S. has been standing by Georgia, rendering strong support for its democratic development, building defense capabilities, boosting economic growth. And throughout these years, thanks to the U.S. support, Georgia has transformed and become a stable country, strong contributor to the global security, serving shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. soldiers in the difficult parts of the world. Good example of the democratic transformation in a very challenging region, and a model of business-friendly governance and investment attractiveness. When it comes to our bilateral relations with the United States, Georgia is very ambitious, and rightfully so, as it is the only country in the region with the institutions, policies, business climate necessary for negotiating quick and comprehensive trade agreement with the United States. Considering its leading business environment, low taxes and low levels of corruption, an FTA with Georgia would be an ideal model for a free trade deal that is fully in line with the U.S. strategic interests. As of now, the country has the free trade deal with the market of 2.3 billion, which includes, of course, the DCFTA with the EU, China, EFTA countries, CIS countries, UK, Turkey. We have GSP regime with the 490 million consumer markets like United States, Canada, and Japan. And when it comes to the rankings, Georgia is leader not only in the region, but worldwide on ease of doing business, on economic freedom, etc. I truly believe that the opening of the Consulate General of Georgia in San Francisco will further deepen our economic ties and people-to-people contacts. And I couldn't have thought of a better candidate. And I want to wish all the best and success to our Consul General and my friend Levan Beridze, who I believe with his colleagues at the Consulate General will largely contribute to further enhancing our economic ties between our countries, between the western part of the United States and Georgia. So again, congratulations with the event. I'm looking forward to the discussion and wish you a fruitful day.
Ambassador, thank you very much. I'm actually looking forward to hosting you in the consulate as well, since we opened up. The pandemic didn't allow you to visit, but hope to see you soon on the West Coast. Thank you. I mean, there was, again, so many things, just to reiterate, so many things that we have to attend to, so many things that we have to increase and work on. And I think that we have an amazing panel coming up here, an amazing presentation from Mamuka Tsereteli, the president of the America-Georgia Business Council. And we have a great crowd here with us for the panel discussion. As we see, Irakli Nadarashvili, the Deputy Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia. We have Paula Mgeladze, who is a business lead at Amazon on AI. We have Mariam Lashki, who wears many hats, and I'll introduce her in more detail. She is the member of the Parliament of Georgia. She was the deputy chairman of JITA, and so on and so on. But I'll get into the details when we get closer to the panel discussion. We have Mark Kane just came on the screen. Mark is with the World Economic Forum. He is the lead on machine learning and AI there. And we have, I already mentioned Mamuka Tsereteli, and we'll ask him in a couple of minutes to give us a wonderful presentation. But again, I just want to thank Ambassador Degnan and Ambassador Bakradze for inaugurating this webinar with us and for delivering these inspiring remarks. We are confident that with our combined efforts, we will be successful in further strengthening this partnership between our countries. Now, like I mentioned, and actually before I do that, I see we have additional guests that I want to mention. That's Nicholas, who is sitting with Mariam and joining us. I think he will have a lot to contribute to our conversation today. All right. Before we move to our panel discussion, we have a very special guest again joining us today, Dr. Mamuka Tsereteli, who has been on the forefront of promoting U.S.-Georgia relations from the political, economic, and even social and cultural standpoint. Mamuka was the founding executive director of the America-Georgia Business Council since 1998 and became the president of the organization in 2009. Under his leadership, the council has emerged as a major instrument for the fostering of U.S.-Georgia trade and investment ties, focused on maximizing opportunities for the member companies. Mamuka's commitment to Georgia goes beyond the council with his work in academia, business, nonprofit sector, private sector, and I can talk on and on. He's a senior fellow with the Central Asia Caucasus Institute at American Foreign Policy Council, and I would say a very important person to know if you want to get the insight into the business opportunities in Georgia or the region. Mamuka, thank you very much. We are looking forward to hearing your presentation on the Business Council and the efforts of bringing U.S. and Georgia private sectors closer together.
Thank you, Levan, for this very kind introduction and very long one too. Congratulations to you for this wonderful lineup of speakers, and very nice to see Ambassador Degner and Ambassador Bakradze joining this discussion today. I think context of this discussion was laid very skillfully by both ambassadors. It was well demonstrated depths of the partnership between two countries. And obviously it started as a political partnership in early 90s, exactly 30 years ago, and evolved into strategic partnership in many different directions. And Levan, I know that you have wonderful lineup of speakers for focused discussion on digitalization and artificial intelligence and other high-tech and technology areas. I'll try to talk a little bit about more like broader framework of bilateral economic and business partnership in particular, and also say a few words about America-Georgia Business Council that was incorporated in 1998 in early years of Georgian independence. And at that time, really, this was only institution focused on bilateral and promotion of bilateral economic ties. Many Georgian organizations mushroomed since that in different parts of the United States, but at that time really we were together with the Georgian Association and American Friends of Georgia, like three voices of covering different aspects of bilateral relationship and promoting it really. Early members of the Business Council were energy companies, and you probably all know how successful this multilateral partnership led by United States and its allies in the region, which evolved into successful pipeline projects, energy project that connected Caspian Sea to Black Sea and Mediterranean. And that infrastructure backbone that connects now different parts of region really create an excellent opportunity for overall economic development. And the US played a very important role, and our member companies were very actively involved. And obviously we as the America-Georgia Business Council, we are very active facilitators and supporters of this initial development in the region. Secondly, very important element that I want to mention is several little bit of bragging about some of our success stories, that several early successes of investments, American investments in Georgia, and early brands, in particular in hospitality business, we have brought with our support, like Marriott Hotels in Tbilisi and several other projects in hospitality business. Gradually, I think depths of Georgian American-Georgian business partnerships evolved, and today Ambassador mentioned several successful projects in high-tech business, in other areas of collaboration. I think this area definitely has a major future going forward. I would like to say a few words about how much we enjoy really partnership with both governments, and both Georgian and American government here. We always had strong support from Department of State and Embassy in Tbilisi, all different segments of embassy, very supportive to all of our efforts. But I would like to go beyond this and mention several very important institutions, definitely Department of Commerce. And if you are an American company, want to work in this part of the world, definitely you need to be in touch with Department of Commerce together with us and other organizations who are supporting these investments and your activities there. And most importantly, Development Finance Corporation, formerly known as OPIC, which has hundreds of millions of dollars of actual money invested in Georgian economy in many different sectors, including crucial sectors of Georgian economy, whether it's hospitality business, energy, or transit and transportation, and so on. I think it's also important to mention that I think we claim that we understand landscape of Georgian political and social and economic environment. So we serve as advisors of our member companies when they decided to go to and work with Georgian companies, they are partners there. So difference between America-Georgia Business Council and government organizations that work together is that we try to work with the private sector on both sides and connect interested parties from both sides. And we have, as I mentioned, several very important success stories in our biography in this regard. Without talking too much about some organizational and America-Georgia Business Council success stories, I wanted to just mention that maybe about some issues that may have some practical benefit for some of our listeners, and that is that major platform for promotion of America-Georgia business partnership for more than 23 years now is annual conferences of America-Georgia Business Council. And we started in 1998, and we never missed one year, including last year during the COVID. We managed to host it in online platform. And it's a good sort of opportunity for companies to come together and meet each other, and also obtain an understanding of status of bilateral relationships for the kind of snapshot for a particular moment. This year, we are very courageous, I think, in our plans, and we hope to host this event in Georgia in October. We are still working on the dates, but second part of the October probably will be the date. And we would like to bring some of our listeners to this conference. And like always, focus will be to highlight overall picture of US-Georgian partnership, but also go deeper in some of the areas. And good news is that there will be two major projects opening by the time with American private sector participation and funded by Development Finance Corporation. One will be Pace Terminal in Poti, multimodal terminal, which will, with a more than $50 million direct investments from DFC and 120 million overall project, which will allow direct maritime connectivity, to stimulate direct maritime connectivity between Poti and United States ports, which is important for us. And second will be American Hospital in Tbilisi. So also very important and interesting project. Again, expanding the traditional areas of American-Georgian partnership, and the healthcare is definitely industry of the future, which also has a lot to do with digitalization and IT development and so forth. Also, we clearly will work we plan to work very closely with US government agencies on this, and Levan knows it well since his career at the embassy in Washington, that we've hosted several certified trade missions to Georgia. which is certified by U.S. Department of Commerce. And that's a great opportunity for American companies to go travel to Georgia and meet all the key government officials there and potential business partners and embassies, U.S. embassies, both U.S. embassy in Tbilisi and Georgian embassy in Washington is always closely involved in this process. And we had to do it last year. We had plans, and more than 15 American companies, new companies, were coming to Georgia. We had to cancel during the COVID, unfortunately, but we hope to organize same kind of event activities sometime soon, maybe later this year, but most probably early next year. Mm-hmm. So I'll probably stop here, Levan. I have a lot to say, but I'd rather listen to other people talking. So thank you for this opportunity, and thanks for this wonderful event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mamuka. Thank you. Very interesting. I mean, for our listeners and our attendees, I mean, America Georgia Business Council is a great platform. And as you saw, for many years of connecting U.S. businesses to Georgian businesses and bringing them together. One of the things Mamuka mentioned was the trade missions, you know, and throughout the years, Mamuka's organization, the America Georgia Business Council, has been leading those efforts in Georgia. Mamuka, can you elaborate a little bit the benefits from the trade missions and how we target the companies to come to Georgia? I think it would be interesting, and what organizations that we partner with here that can also be good partners during that time.
And usually start from last point of your question. So the chambers of commerce, local chambers of commerce, American companies that are interested for their international extension. I think one detail that needs to be mentioned, that White House issued recently a strategic document focusing on building resilience of supply chain, and Georgia's location definitely is important from that perspective, and companies who are interested in building and looking at alternative supply chains. I think companies who are interested in that and more international sort of outreach should be our target. Usually we, in preparation of the trade missions, we outline some of the priority areas, industries, and then do the marketing among companies who are interested in that, and hopefully Consulate General will be actively involved in the marketing once we start this process. But I think it's essential to mention this new strategic direction, which was also mentioned at G7 meeting, and building alternatives to, or sometimes you can consider it as a complementary to some of the initiatives that other countries have, in this case, BRI and other initiatives. I think this is a new framework that is forming in our region, where Georgia's location and also open nature of its economy and access to other markets will play additional very important role going forward. So we'll focus on logistics, IT sector, and obviously wine industry and agriculture. And we should probably mention that good news that during times of COVID, Georgian agriculture export increased significantly and will continue probably grow going forward. And America Georgia Business Council is playing active role in promoting Georgian wine export to the United States. We host annual event called Vino Forum, combining science and history and geography and marketing and economics of wine business together. And hopefully we plan to host this year this conference at UC Davis sometime in November.
Okay, great. I mean, the very important point that the wine increased during the pandemic. So we were all consuming more wine while we were sitting at home. But very interesting. One other point I wanted to highlight is that, you know, you mentioned already, but during the trade missions, with technological advancement, I think we're going to be focusing a lot, and I would be happy to get involved and provide support from California and focus on some of the tech companies that we can bring to Georgia to elevate that development in the country and foster those relationships. One other thing I wanted to ask is you mentioned the DFC, which is the Development Finance Corporation, formerly OPIC. It is one of the great mechanisms that provides investments for companies, especially for strategic projects in Georgia. And the two that you mentioned was the PACE terminal, as well as the American Hospital in Georgia. I think it would be interesting for the attendees and listeners to get kind of a structure of how to approach and just an overview of how engaged DFC is. I mean, I worked at the embassy you mentioned, and I worked with Kenneth and our friends at OPIC to make those projects possible. And I know that they have more than $600 million invested since the 90s. In Georgia. So anything you want to add on that side? I think
I would just add, Levan, I would just add that you mentioned Kenneth Angel, as he is called at DFC, Mr. Georgia there. He is definitely very accessible and open for new applications, and processes pretty trivial. If you have interesting project that you want to invest in, you go through you can approach us, and we can guide you how to do that, but you can directly approach to DFC and make a specific application for the project. Important elements of this process is to have obviously right project design, and that's where we can be more helpful in terms of identifying those projects and in Georgia if you have specific interest. But the process is pretty straightforward, simple, and very transparent with DFC. And as you mentioned, $600 million in multiple projects, tens of projects done already. Very successful track record that OPIC has, the DFC has in Georgia. One additional detail with the reforms that transitioned OPIC into DFC, if project is sound and viable and commercially viable and potentially successful, it used to be necessary to have American partnership present. Now it is allowed and it's possible to have projects that are important for the country, host country, without direct American participation. Obviously, American component helps, but DFC can lend money without even American investors necessarily being involved. So which simplifies a little bit some of the tasks that some companies have, but clearly it has to meet the standards that DFC has on many different directions, but process is, again, as I said, transparent and straightforward.
Oh, thank you, Mamuka. And I think that one other point in speaking with DFC is that one of their priorities is that focusing on women-led projects and women-led businesses, which is, I think, their focus is raising on that. And I think that a lot of businesses can utilize on that opportunity. Thank you, Mamuka. We hope that the companies present here today will use this opportunity to follow up with you to learn more about the America-Georgia Business Council and the benefits it brings to intensifying ties between American and Georgian companies. I would now like to move to our panel discussion we have been waiting for to discuss the rapid development of technology around the world, and especially the current need of digitalizing the public and private sectors by integrating cloud-based services and artificial intelligence models in everyday processes. As you know, today the world is rapidly shifting to a digital era and developing higher value-added economy. The digitalization is reshaping our economies and societies, and it is only a matter of time before everything around us is automated. I think that's inevitable. I feel that recent global pandemic, especially the challenges that came with it, have accelerated the digitalization process throughout the world and increased the role of emerging and smaller markets. In this process, Georgia is taking the advantage and makes rapid adjustments and reforms in order to boost the FDI through the simplified business procedures, decreased bureaucracy, and increased intellectual and relatively cheaper human capital. Our distinguished panelists will offer their views on the raising trends around the world, led by global tech companies, and underline the need for digitalization across all sectors of economic development, especially in the emerging economies such as Georgia. Now, I briefly mentioned about our speakers, but I would like to very briefly introduce them now and then open it for their perspective and question and answer session. As I mentioned, we have Irakli Nadarashvili, who's the Deputy Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia. He directly oversees tech and innovation, as well as entrepreneurship development of the entire country. Mr. Nadarashvili will provide us with a brief overview of the business environment in Georgia with an emphasis on investment opportunities, especially in the tech and innovation sector. He'll underline main platforms and mechanisms that foster technological advancement of Georgia and Georgian companies and strengthen the overall innovation technology and startup ecosystems. I'm glad to say we have Mark Kane with us. He is the lead for AI and machine learning at the World Economic Forum. Prior to the forum, he served in government at the UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Office and the African Union Commission. His expertise and experience will give us a better insight into the current development of technological advances and the application of AI across different industries, especially its impact on the developing countries and their economies. We have Mariam Lashki with us. As I mentioned, she wears a lot of hats. She's the member of the Parliament of Georgia. She's the deputy chair of the External Relations Committee, as the member of the Education Committee, and as well as the associate professor at the Business and Technology University of Georgia. She has also led many programs responsible for the establishment and expansion of the Georgia's innovation and technology ecosystem as the deputy chairman of GITA. In her current capacity, Mariam will discuss further development of innovation and technology ecosystem in Georgia with the legislative support and possibilities for expanding AI applications in the country. She will emphasize the importance of e-governance and digital diplomacy that is becoming more and more necessary in today's world. I'm very happy that we also have Pavle Mgeladze joining us from Seattle. He is actually the first Georgian to hold a senior business position at Amazon, where he took up his job in 2016 after his degree in business administration from Emory University. His career at Amazon began with assembling pricing algorithms for Trade and Team, and he's now the head of the World Reverse Logistics Artificial Intelligence business team. Pavle will discuss the role of AI in the modern world and how we might see its development as countries implement more and more automation across all industries. I think he will also highlight the artificial intelligence models Amazon uses to solve the problems of consumers, and as a result of which Amazon has maintained the status of one of the most beloved companies for consumers in recent years. Now, without further ado, let me ask our speakers to share their perspective regarding each of the topics I outlined, starting with the Deputy Minister. Irakli, please, if you may.
Thank you, Levan, and again, good morning to all our American friends and good evening to Georgian colleagues. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, really it's an honor to participate in this very important panel. And first of all, I really want to thank the Consulate General in San Francisco for this opportunity, organizing this very significant event, especially dedicating it to 30 years anniversary of Georgia's independence. This is again another great opportunity, a good platform to discuss the business environment of Georgia, the investment opportunities, especially in tech and innovation field. And again, when we speak about today's challenges, economic and other types of challenges, of course, we are still focused on at the COVID-19, at the crisis, and which is still has to be overcome. And maybe from the epidemiological perspective, the worst is behind, but certainly we are at the very deep economic crisis, the entire planet. And it certainly needs to be addressed carefully, but effectively and very, very actively from many different point of views. I just want, as an introduction before we start the question and answers, I just wanted to give you a very quick snapshot about the current economic standing of the Georgia, which based on the very recent indicators, it looks rather promising. The April has shown a record economic growth. The GDP has grown by almost 45% year on year. Again, the 2020 was not the best year, but the growth rate is exceeding the same period growth rate of 2019, which again is a very significant indicator of the recovering economy. We also have a significant growth during the first quarter of 2021 for the export, which exceeded 25% again year-on-year growth, and with the very promising recovery perspective of tourism industry, which supposed to be one of the biggest contributors to Georgian economy. So with this positive scenario that we observe these days, we can expect some double-digit growth during the 2021, which again positions Georgia as a healthy economic environment with right economic policy development and importantly adequate response measures to COVID. And therefore we believe with all these circumstances it really opens some new opportunities to attract more FDI and new and modern technologies to our country and economy in the after COVID recovery period. So again, I'm very happy to participate. I wish all participants and guests very productive day ahead within this conference. Thank you, Levan.
Levan, we cannot hear you.
Sorry, Irakli. Thank you very much. I wanted to say we'll get back to the topics that you highlighted with our Q&A session. Now I would like to ask everybody to kind of speak on their perspectives. Mark, please let us know your thoughts on the current development of technological advances and the application of AI across different industries, especially its impact on the developing countries. Mark, please.
Sure. Thank you, Levan, and greetings, everyone. It's really great to be here, and congratulations to you, Levan, and to the consulate and the embassy on convening this wonderful event. We are so happy to have you in San Francisco representing Georgia, and I think that this is the beginning of a very fruitful set of conversations and actions that are really going to build on all of the possibilities that have already been highlighted through the remarks that have been given here. So just a bit of context from me. I work at the World Economic Forum. We work globally with governments, industry, and civil society to accelerate the benefit of artificial intelligence and to manage and mitigate the risks and harms that it can bring. Of course, the forum does many, many things, but this is the part that I work on. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. You know, at the very high level, we're in a very potent moment for artificial intelligence. It's been estimated that AI could contribute over $15 trillion worth of additional economic value to the global economy by 2030. And the growth of AI in industry has been very rapid in the last couple of years. One of the key trends that we've been seeing in the companies that we work with, and we work with thousands of companies around the world, is that AI has really started to move out of its traditional home in the technology industry. Companies like Amazon, Google, etc., who have had a really strong role in developing AI initially. It's really started to move from there across virtually every other sector in which there is a large amount of data, which at this point is pretty much every sector. And so from healthcare to insurance, consumer finance, energy, mobility, retail, agriculture, metals and minings, pretty much you name the sector, there is AI being developed and used. And that is really exciting because there is quite a lot of opportunity, we think, for AI to improve performance, productivity, profits, outcomes across those sectors. And we think that we're just at the very beginning of figuring out how to realize those benefits. What I will say, though, at the high level, we've also seen that it's harder than we maybe once thought that it was to really realize those benefits. And I'm looking mostly at the company side with these remarks. A lot of companies have adopted AI in a sort of skin deep kind of way. And the latest McKinsey research on this, they describe it as being AI adoption being broad but not deep. So almost every company has tried using AI in one or another use case, but very few companies have really integrated it across their full operations. And one of the reasons for that is because it requires a certain level of talent and skill set and education to be present amongst the workers. And in a lot of industries and in a lot of geographies, those skill sets are currently lacking. So that's something that I'll probably come back to in my remarks is capacity building, creating that skilled workforce who can really drive this forward. The last thing I'll say, just kind of at the high level, is we work with a lot of governments on their AI policies and strategies, and we've seen in the last few years a real rise in governments committing to national AI strategies. And there we've really seen that flesh out what a lot of the benefits could be for governments who really align their science and technology policies, their international diplomacy, their SME entrepreneurship policies, their education systems around this goal of AI leadership. And we think that the best is yet to come there, and that there are a number of very exciting things that governments can do to both stimulate a very thriving and robust AI industry in their jurisdictions, and also to accelerate the use of AI to solve some of the societal problems that we see all over the world, whether it's climate change, use of AI to improve access to information for citizens or do service delivery through e-government. And so we are really excited for the potential for AI to help both in the industry side and the government side, but it's not going to get there on its own. And so this is the work that we do, is to try to help governments and companies figure out how do we get from here to there. So I'll pause there and we can come back to any important aspects as we go.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think there's going to be a lot of follow-up questions on that and how we can better prepare for this digitalization and automation, and how countries can actually be more prepared for that integration. Again, let me now ask Mariam, could you please elaborate more on what is being done to further develop and strengthen the innovation and technology ecosystem in Georgia, which really well ties into, on the topic that Mark ended his remarks. How do you see the necessity for expanding AI applications in the country as well? And please give us your perspective on the environment.
Levan, thank you very much. Let me start my words with expressing appreciation and also joining my colleagues in congratulating the consulate office in Georgia to the San Francisco, and especially you, Levan, because of your efforts and special commitments, you made this happen. So congratulations to you. This is indeed a further step to further deepen the partnership between California and Georgia, and it's kind of a building the golden bridge between our two countries, Bay Area and Georgia. So I'm very thankful for all the commitments who have contributed in this process. When talking about the digitalization, and looking at the global tendencies, what's happening, indeed we see that the so-called black swan COVID-19 has transformed the globe into agile framework, I have to say, and transformed 195 countries into 195 startups who are trying to find the rescuing models and business processes for socio-economic development. And we see that this has been indeed accelerated. This COVID-19 has accelerated all these processes. And now we are in a so-called next normal process when we have to have the radical approaches and radical changes. An answer to it is the digital transformation, which is mainly understood usually as digitalizing existing processes. But this is way more. This is a paradigmal transformation of business models within the countries, both by the private sector as well as the government. So the answer to it and what we mean with this is that the fourth industrial revolution gives us the opportunity to move from the passive users of the technology to innovation product global contributors. And we have to say that Georgia has understood this process, and I have to be kind of honored and pleased that Georgian government has been pretty active in transforming and following the global tendencies in that regard, and has integrated the digitalization process. I'll be happy to discuss on concrete instrument and steps which government of Georgia took in this process, but have to highlight that one of the major and important thing which also marked noted was from the policy side. So we took also the examples from our northern partners and especially US examples. We say that, for instance, NASA or DARPA have taken the kind of the step when they were doing themselves and promoting the activities. And currently NASA is not kind of expending the money on those activities which the private sector has taken up. So NASA has been the first risk taker, and this is a good process and the right step when the governments are the first risk takers, and they are kind of promoting the ecosystem and promoting the private sectors to be to leveraging all the benefits from this ecosystem. So government of Georgia has taken this step, and I have to say that one of the first and important step was that innovation technology was highlighted as the key priority for the higher level of leadership, and government has kind of stated that innovation is the key priority of the country development, as a kind of a knowledge and innovation-driven economy was the key driving force. On the other side, I have to agree, all my colleagues and panelists, as well as the ambassadors who have highlighted the importance of educational system, the skilled workforce, and the right educational reform is crucial part. And I'll be happy to talk in Q&A session what are currently the concrete initiatives within the Parliament of Georgia in order to further enhance the educational system, especially oriented on technology, entrepreneurship fields, which are the key pillars of promoting the innovation, and especially AI knowledge, which we are having kind of mathematic background of the country leveraging this potential. On the other side, the institutionalization of the support from the government is very important, and as Deputy Minister as well has mentioned, and overseeing Georgia's Innovation Technology Agency, which was one of the key drivers to promote the activities by introducing the concrete programs such as access to finance, training programs, regulatory initiatives, which have kind of speed up this process. On perspective of the AI as a very important part of this digitalization process, we all understand that we cannot avoid AI, and it's part of kind of promoting and enhancing the governance. And on that regard, there are some of the initiatives. There have been discussions about elaborating the countrywide AI strategy, which is still under discussion, and I'll be happy to have further follow up with Mark and some other colleagues to really finalize this process in the country. But on the other side, there are some of the initiatives within the country, which is including attracting the key leaders of IT companies to come in Georgia, invest in Georgia, hire local workforce and promote activities. And on the other side, the government, which is very open in opening up the databases, data, which is one of the crucial parts for AI and machine learning, to really pilot some of the processes by the governmental kind of initiatives and work with the private sector who are doing this work way better than the government, I have to say. So I'll be happy to have further follow-up discussions during the Q&A, and also hereby I would like to express my readiness and willingness to further discuss and have the follow-up activities from the Parliament side. So thank you once again very much, and looking forward for our fruitful discussion.
Mariam, thank you so much. This was very insightful. We're looking forward to the Q&A and getting your kind of perspective on the concrete instruments, as you mentioned, from the Parliament of Georgia, from the legislative side, what is done to kind of strengthen that environment in Georgia to allow more and more technology and more artificial intelligence to actually thrive in Georgia. Now let me move to Pavle. With your extensive experience working with AI models and their application across different services, could you please share with us your view on the role of AI in today's technological advancement and what we should expect in the future? What are some of the examples of successful AI models that Amazon uses and is developing?
Thank you, Levan. Let me first of all start thanking you for organizing this event and having me as a panelist among such distinguished members. So there are a few things that I want to highlight, since we have some decision makers from the government and the government supporters, whether that's the ambassadors or other partners from the World Economic Forum. So the trends that Amazon sees will actually be transferred to other sectors in a few years, because we try to be the forefront of the development to kind of get an edge on the competition, which is fiercely thriving, right? So we're in the e-commerce business, and we're in the cloud business, and we're in the shipping business and whatnot. So Amazon being 1.3 million people company, we try to be in every business, and as you all know well, the competition is ever increasing. And to get an edge, we try to use the AI as much as possible. And I just want to take maybe 2 steps back and think about the technological development that brought kind of revolution into our lives. And the first one was maybe one of the recent ones was when the web browsers started to see some adoption, right? So we had the static web browsers that could not be programmed any way possible, but it was like a newspaper, static. You could read through a web, but at that time it was kind of magic, right? We used to read the books, and now all of a sudden you could read everything instead of books on the screen, and it can be more than books. And then the JavaScript came along and brought the programmability, which made it possible for the websites like Google and Amazon and Facebook and YouTube to be built on top of these web browsers. And now we have these AI models that totally change the way we interact with not only the websites or the applications, but even the appliances that we have at home, or the cars or some other device. And as Mark mentioned, even beyond the tech companies, everyone started to use the AI, whether this electricity company tried to increase the grid efficiency, or the transportation system to try to find the best route to avoid some obstacles, right? And what I see at Amazon is that when I joined in 2016, we were actively using AI models in our search systems and the pricing, But today, every project we launch, there is a question that we have to answer. How are we going to use the AI model in this new project? So what that really means is that from the user's perspective, when you go to the Amazon website, you see the completely customized website that AI is actually customizing that for you. And it's trying to guess what is the most relevant information you need to see on your web page. And that's not only for Amazon, but if you open up the Facebook or any social app or any major web page, the AI is trying to personalize the experience for you and tailor it as much as possible to create kind of like a unique experience. That's the first one. And when you go to Amazon, you see this customized web page, and then you try to search something, right? And then another AI model kicks in, and you found the item that you were looking for, and there's a price. Another AI model is pricing that, and you click on that, and another AI model is actually surfacing the relevant data you want to see about that item, and then you move it to the cart. Another bunch of AI models, your payment system goes through the AI models. And what does it really mean is that this 1.3 million people are divided between like among hundreds and hundreds of different teams. And those teams are divided among dozens of smaller teams, and every one of those teams wants to use the AI model to increase the efficiency, to do things faster, better, cheaper, right? And what it does is that it basically creates unheard demand on the people who know, number one, how to program these models, and number two, how to set the business objectives. But forget the business objectives, because the people on the business side are much easier to find, but developers, software engineers, and the data engineers that can't actually build the models are extremely scarce. So scarce that we currently have, one company currently has, like Amazon currently has, close to 30,000 openings for the software developers. And to give you the perspective, Georgia's entire workforce is around like 1 million people, right? And what is it, like the problem of one company can be an opportunity for entire countries, right? And Amazon is not the only company who's suffering from extreme lack of the people who are proficient at building the AI models, but there's big tech that absorbs all the talent, and there are some mid-tier companies that try to hire, but they cannot hire because all the talent goes to the big companies. And then there are the universities who churn out the people with those skills, but it's not anywhere near enough. And because we could not hire people fast enough, we actually internally opened the Amazon Machine Learning University. So what should this tell all of us is that I've never seen anything going at such a high pace and picking up such a high demand on the people side, right? So as Ambassador Degnan mentioned, that the technology has permeated every aspect of our lives, and now we have to move this technology from the rule-based systems to the AI-based models, because they're a lot more efficient and they can solve problems much faster and with a lot less resources. So imagine us trying to change every aspect of technology with extremely limited resources. And to highlight how limited the overall AI resources are, is that in the world workforce is somewhere close to like 3 billion people, right? And the overall software development pool is close to 30 million people. And out of those 30 million people, maybe 1% or 2% can actually work on the AI models. And what it does is that companies go above and beyond, both in terms of pay as well as in terms of supportive resources, to find the people who would want to work on this area and give them all the support. And as you well know, Levan, but some others might not know, I did not have any data science experience or any experience prior to joining this role into the AI field, but the demand was so high that they actually let me learn on the job. And they provided lots of resources, including the university classes and whatnot. And we try to utilize every single person at Amazon who wants to work in this area to provide sufficient tools and education and whatnot. So as a country, we should be spending a lot of resources trying to figure out how can we develop the people within our country who will be the highest demanded people in the world, not only in the tech companies, but what happens to every other type of company that will eventually have to move and become a tech company. For example, like banks are a good example, right? Like every bank is currently stating that, hey, we're a tech company, which they are striving to be the tech company, they're not. And they would need developing resources and they would need the AI resources, right? And as much as AWS does the automation of the AI models, there has to be some people internally who will take this model and adopt it to the internal use cases. So again, I just will reinstate that the demand I see on the people who are not even like extreme professionals, like who want to work in this area, and the pace they are getting is something that I've never seen anywhere in the world or any other sector, right? So we also have like a lot of demand on the statisticians, people who know how to build the pricing algorithms, and there's a lot of demand, but the demand that we see on the AI model builders is something that I would never even expect even 5 years ago, right? And only like, if you only think about the Alexa devices, Alexa-enabled devices, which is our major AI leading area, they have potentially like close to 2,000 developers, and try to find another 2,000 developers to be the competitive product there. Like it's nearly impossible. And when we do not find those people, we try to build the internal resources. So as countries where in the world where the location doesn't really matter where you actually physically see it, we should be spending a lot of resources try to develop those talents, because those people are currently the highest demand people and highest paid people. So summarize with that.
All right, wonderful, Pavle. Thank you very much. It's a very important subject, and we've discussed this actually one-on-one before. That this demand, I mean, the scarcity of the engineers throughout the world. And can you imagine if if large corporations such as Amazon and such as Facebook and these corporations are actually hunting for the best talent, then coming down to smaller companies, I mean, where can you get the right talent, right? Yeah, I guess we can open up to Q&A to our attendees. I encourage everybody, there is a section of Q&A on the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to post any questions, and I will kind of relay them to our speakers here. This, Pavle, since you ended on this topic, I think it ties into one of the questions that I was thinking about. Was that we all agree that technological advancement is inevitable, and it's already here, and AI becomes more and more crucial in streamlining many different processes, whether in the public or the private sector. Now, how do companies or even countries better prepare for this necessity? I mean, how do you build that pool of internally, but also how do you attract AI engineers or software engineers to come to Georgia or actually work on some of the projects in Georgia? I mean, I know that there are more and more companies in Georgia, more and more startups that are focusing on AI, such as we know Pulsar AI, one of the companies that made an exit and is developing its technology here. We have Maxim AI and a few other companies that the sector itself is growing in Georgia. But what are some of the things that we can talk about, that some of the specific things that can help prepare better for this necessity? anyone can start, and then I'm interested to hearing all of your thoughts on this.
Should I get started?
Sure.
Yeah, so as everything at Amazon, we look at the problems in a like short term, what we can do in the short term and what we can do in the long term, so that like when the real solutions kick in, we get the most benefit, right? And from the country's perspective, or whether that's a like company's perspective, first we need to create awareness. As squishy as it might sound, how many people do you think, let's take Georgia as an example, know that the average salary there is maybe what, $400 US per month?
It is about
right?
$400.
So, about $400. How many people actually know that the AI engineers at Amazon are getting close to $500,000 a year? Right? Maybe not a lot. That's one. And another one is that like once you create the awareness and communicate that, hey, instead of you learning finance or marketing or studying law or something, I'm not trying to like discriminate those positions, but if you want to be the highest demanded individual in the future, or you might want to start your own company, what would be the skills that you need to be learning now? And I would go as far as going to schools and talking to kids about the future and explaining where this is going, right? And telling them that, hey, you have a couple of options, and whatever you want to do, it's up to you currently. And even beyond schools, the people who go to the universities, we need to make sure that people understand that there is this incredible opportunity, not only in the US, but in anywhere in the world. Like if we can find somebody, like anywhere in the world, we would hire them. Regardless of their location, we might not be able to hire them in the US, but we will hire them in the European offices or somewhere in Africa or India. We will definitely hire a talent if we find one, right? So we spend around 4 months finding one engineer, just normal engineer. I'm not talking about like a AI specific engineer. And if you are talking about AI, maybe it goes up to a year, right? So the company that has almost infinite resources is spending a year to find somebody who is actually very good at this task. And when you communicate this to people, then they will have to make decision. Is this for me? And if it's for me, and if I want to be an engineer and I don't want to be a painter or musician or something else, like what should I be doing, right? And the second part is, I don't think it's as important as raising the awareness, because with the current access to the information in the classes, where Coursera has a free classes, the MIT has a free classes, and Khan Academy has a free classes, the universities, I think the people will figure out how to learn these skills. And they might not be able to become like a Google engineers within 2 years, but hey, what happens to Levan's office who wants to hire a simple AI developer who will detect maybe like fraudulent cases in some of your use cases, right? And you might not be able to pay them like $500,000 USD, but that's a great stepping stone already to pave yourself into this industry. And again, because the demand is so high, you know, this high tide rises all the boats, like people will find the opportunities. So I think the most critical part here is the awareness. And once the awareness is there, then we can drill down into, okay, who's struggling with acquiring the skills? Why are they struggling? Because they don't know how to find the free courses, or they don't know how to speak English and they don't understand what they say, or they don't have like a solid science background, right? But all of these things are solvable as long as we create the demand. People will actually, some people will find themselves, will work their way through to learn the programming languages and how to do that. And it's not the rocket science to be a programmer. Like I think anyone with a reasonable background can do that in 2 years to become a junior developer. And once you're a junior developer, then on-the-job training will teach you everything. So it's kind of like a magic stick where regardless of the background, regardless of the location, regardless of the family origins, you learn how to program. We don't ask you anything else. At Amazon, we're not interested in anything else as long as you can program. And we'll treat you as a, I don't know, like a holy spirit, right? So like unreal attention and careful treatment to those people. So I think the awareness is the key part here.
No, very interesting. I guess what you're saying is that the access to resources is there, to the tools for people that want to learn. Is just the main thing, I guess, is the awareness for the public, awareness for the younger generations to seek the right education for that, right? Because the demand is only going to grow with technological advancement. And the second part would be the education and focusing on the right approach. Anyone else would like to add on this, Mark?
Well,
okay, or Irakli?
Yes, it's a very, very interesting question, and let me give you an example how we developed the innovation ecosystem in Georgia. I mean, Georgia yet has not much to say about the artificial intelligence and the approach in this field, but we have some very tangible results in developing and supporting the innovation ecosystem, which is relatively young. I mean, it's only 5 years literally that the government has started to development and supporting of the ecosystem. And before that, we literally had nothing. I mean, there was no access to finance. There was no institutional approach to how to develop the idea, the innovative idea, and how to reach the goal that every startup wants to go through. So what we started was the creation of the environment, which on one hand would bring the private sector to the ecosystem, and on the other hand to develop the instruments that would fill the gaps that that existed at this point. So we started with access to finance programs. We started with incubators. Later we introduced the very competitive acceleration program in Georgia. And what this bring to the ecosystem, that Georgia has become a certain hub for the region. So now we have the startups which are approaching Georgian ecosystem for the opportunity of development. And another example of some like government intervention and the creation of the environment which brings the knowledge and the expertise from outside is probably also a very recent initiative when Georgian government introduced the special tax regime for international IT companies, which brought down the personal income tax from 20% to 5%. And already now we have on market EPAM Systems and Exadel, two giant IT companies who established their offices in Georgia, who brought a couple of hundreds of their existing talents from different countries, also hired another couple of hundred of local professionals. And what's most important, they are heavily investing in education of IT specialists, which again, we all speak about the lack of professionals, about the educational like problems, and in Georgia and in emerging countries, this is even more specific and even more, problematic. So having these kind of companies here doing business and also investing in talents and in education is one thing that the countries like Georgia, not very rich and not very much experienced in new technologies, can benefit of bringing the companies who will do this in parallel to their job. And when we speak about artificial intelligence here as well, I think, again, we are far behind even in our region, because we don't even have yet the framework and the strategy and the legislation for AI. But again, this is probably an opportunity for us to structure it in a way that it becomes attractive for companies, maybe not very like the giant companies like Amazon, but the companies who work in this field, to come over to Georgia and start developing their projects in this more friendly environment, legislatively more friendly, and maybe fiscally more friendly environment than in other countries, and have the same situation when business invests in education and also contributes to the development of the local labor market in this regard. So I think we have these opportunities still open in terms of AI, and as Maria mentioned, the process is on the way. We are working on the strategy. The strategy will be then, transformed to the legislative framework. So this is the way how we see the very first steps in this regard. Otherwise, starting from the very scratch would be much difficult. And also one thing, that Georgia is really famous for its advanced state services that have been developing in Georgia for the last decade. Again, there is a huge opportunity in further development of these state one-stop shop services in terms of integration of AI components. And here as well, the government, we believe, should be very open and transparent in order to attract the interested parties to start building on the databases, on the services that already exist on the government side and which are utilized by millions of Georgians, and open this digital transformation phase in order to, again, attract more talents to start doing business here, AI oriented, and also elaborate on the existing systems that we have.
Thank you, Irakli. Thank you. I mean, being a small country, it's definitely necessary, the capacity building and providing incentives for companies to actually come in and expand in Georgia, expand their capacity there. Mariam, please, and Mark also.
Definitely, when we're talking about the government's AI readiness, first of all, we have to admit that AI, and not only AI, generally innovation happens in the countries where the democracy is the core value, and we have kind of the environment and ecosystem where the innovations are kind of rapidly growing in transparent approaches, when the governments are kind of integrating the democratic activities in the country and they are having the openness. There is the official ranking of Oxford Insights regarding the government's AI readiness index, where Georgia is not yet well positioned, and I hope that we'll be kind of jumping up on the top positions with the very good reform agendas which we are planning. There are several recipes how we have to kind of be like as a country more AI ready. We have the readiness of AI, but as my colleagues also mentioned, the crucial part is the workforce, the education and the talent pool, which is the kind of which the countries and governments have to utilize these resources. And when you have the strong intellectual resources in the country, it's way simpler and easy to attract the global leaders in the country who are utilizing these resources. But from the government side, again, one thing is on the educational agenda. Another very important part is to set up the national task force and bring this on the higher decision makers level. Aiming high is very important, but it has to be definitely realistic. When you have identified also the talent pool, you have to put more efforts in educating them and identifying the key stakeholders, partners, internationals who are leveraging all these opportunities. And I'm sure that I'm happy to say and agree with Irakli that we are on the right track, and Georgia is on the right track on this process. And I hope that in that ranking will be positioned pretty soon on a top level.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Thank you, Mariam. Mark, please.
Yes, I see that we're come up on time, so I'll be very brief. You know, I have to say, hearing the last two comments from Irakli and Mariam, I'm at a loss to say what I would actually add to the Georgian agenda beyond what you are already thinking about and doing. And it sounds like a lot of the ingredients are in place and a lot of the processes are underway. And it's just figuring out kind of what is the recipe and what is the sequencing and what is the right kind of timing and quantity of investments into these different domains. I think that being a small country comes with unique disadvantages and advantages. What we have seen, though, is that in general, the small countries, while certainly not able to compete in all of the different aspects of AI, have an advantage in that they can really hone in on a couple of key areas where they have existing strengths and skill sets and national competencies. And then just by doing really well in those few areas, really move the needle significantly. And so what I would say is, I think, you know, everything that's come up on this call so far around the workforce, around kind of more robust financing mechanisms. I would add to this more integration between industry and academia. This is something that we've seen a number of countries do successfully, particularly small countries, where it's a small ecosystem where people from academia can, for example, work in industry for a period, or people from industry can contribute to academic research efforts or fund R&D with an eye towards commercialization. You know, all of that, I think, is probably on the agenda for you already. I think that the Innovation and Technology Agency is a wonderful kind of structure and construct to have in place to drive this. And it sounds like between what's happening in the ministry and what you're pushing at the parliament level, Mariam, we have a lot to look forward to in the coming months and years. And I will just say, from the forum side, we would be delighted to be supportive however we can on that journey and in that process for the government of Georgia. And yeah, let's consider this the beginning of a conversation rather than the end of it.
Mark, thank you very much. I mean, it's definitely understood from your comments that the synergy has to be there from the government, from the private sector, from the educational kind of sector as well, and it all has to come together for the environment and the ecosystem to be strong. I know we're very short on time, but I do want to get in a couple more questions in. You know, extended for a few more minutes, if that's okay, with the attendees. There is a question here. As companies get more and more powerful, they use super powerful AI to maximize shareholder value by making users do certain things that might not be in their own best interest. For example, companies use AI to make people spend more time on their app. Especially powerful is AI in gaming industry. Now, the question is, how do people in the corporations behave to keep users' well-being in the first place, and how should people protect themselves? I think it would be a good question to Pavle and Mark to kind of give us their perspective on this.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because what the companies sometimes want does not really align with the best interest of the users. For example, when you go to a supermarket and you're at the checkout line and you see all the chocolates and cookies there, what does the supermarket want was you to spend as much money as possible in their facility, and what you want is to be healthy and financially sound and all those things, which are like against them, right? And as you introduce the AI tools Facebook is a good example. They are measured against like daily active users, weekly active users, monthly active users, and based on their active usage, they can charge higher advertisement fees to the companies that want to advertise on Facebook, right? So they want you to spend more time on the Facebook. You want to be smarter, healthier, and better off. So I think this does not have like one particular answer, and companies will continue using AI to maximize the shareholder value, but the people on their end have to have some mechanism to protect themselves from overusing the technology. And it's much easier said than done, because we all know how much endorphin are produced when we get the notification on the phone, right? Like, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to turn off all the notifications? Probably not, but you should at least consider turning off some not important notifications from your phone. Keeping phone close by to you is a very dangerous thing, and you should be keeping it as much away as possible. For example, at work, I try to keep it somewhere far in the drawer so that I don't see that and I don't grab it. Otherwise, it attracts my attention and I want to do some of the things. YouTube is a great example, right? It can show you the videos that you're interested, that give you zero value, but it keeps you going there and spending more time. And from the company's perspective, that's what the user wants. The user wants the attractive content, and there is your attractive content, but does it really give you the value? Probably not. So the long-term solution to that is decentralized AI, which there is a company called SingularityNet, which is building the AI to assess the other AI models. So I might be going a little bit into the future, but it's actually around the corner. They're working with the decentralized blockchain platform called Cardano. They're building decentralized AI. And what it's going to do is that the AI is going to assess the other AI models on how effectively they achieve their objectives. And us, as let's say individual developers, can build, for example, attention protective AI model that you can install on your phone, and it will figure out which notifications are important for you and which notifications are not, and only going to surface the ones that are important. So maybe Facebook kind of freak out about that and Apple's going to block them, but they will find a way, like the ingenuity of the people in the decentralized world will find a way to bring the AI models. And if we have a good way of assessing these new models, how effectively they do their job, and we pay small fee directly to the producer of the model, not to the company. For example, if you use AWS services, you're paying entire Amazon, not to the developer per se, who's getting $500,000 US. By the way, like they are not underpaid. But if you can directly pay to the person who's developing the AI model, and this model is actually achieving its objectives, then they can make a lot more money, and they will be incentivized to do more work individually versus working for the corporations. So that's basically gonna take the power away from the large organizations. But before that happens, we have to have very simple mechanisms ourselves not to become the slaves of the AI, because it's extremely powerful tool, right? Because just a small insertion, the way the AI works is that instead of writing the code line by line and the computer executing what, for example, Levan wrote in the code, you basically give the objective. So for example, the objective is that I want people to spend more time on their Facebook feed, or I want people to buy more things, or I want people to engage with the advertisement more. And the AI is trying to use like millions of data points to figure out what it should do for you to spend more time, for you to be more engaged, for you to stay longer with them. But it does not care whether you're going to get a good night's sleep. It does not care whether you're in a good physical shape. And because it's an AI model, it has its own objective. And try to fight against the AI model that has thousands of the best engineers in the world. Who's going to win? we're not going to win as individuals unless we do the very simple things, right? You know, there's a hedgehog and a fox story where like a hedgehog has only one trick, right? It becomes round, and the fox, even though it's canny, cannot do anything, right? And we have to be in a hedgehog position where we do one simple thing, just like get rid of those technologies from where we don't want them to be.
Thank you, Pavle. I guess we have to create strong AI model that will be checking up on another AI model. So,
exactly, there is a solution, but before that comes, we have to come up with our own mechanism to protect ourselves.
Sure. Mark, would you?
Yeah, I think that was a great answer. The only thing I'd add really is, I mean, it's a great question, and that was a great answer. I think one thing that we're probably not doing enough of currently is looking at how existing laws and regulations and statutes in other domains should be applied to AI. And I think this is one of the examples. Now, I think there's a spectrum, of course, in the way that AI is proving damaging to people. There's obviously the question of addiction to screens and you know, the sort of dopamine and endorphin hit that the sort of hacking of our brain chemistry that Pavle referred to. That I think is kind of new terrain that has to be looked at carefully by companies, also by regulators, at least to mandate some degree of disclosure of how these systems are interfacing with an individual, and or the ability to opt out of certain kinds of use of one's data, or you know, history of how one has engaged with the system. I will say though, there's a number of areas where I think that existing regulations probably ought to be applied more robustly, at least in the US and in other countries. You know, so for example, we hear a lot about biased decision-making based on historical data sets that have bias encoded into them by humans. It's not really the AI's fault. The AI is just reproducing the human bias in areas like consumer lending, for example, or sentencing algorithms, or you know, any number of other decision-making models like that. And there, I think that we need to sort of exercise the powers that governments already have to make sure that the existing laws, you know, for example, in the US, we have very strong anti-discrimination laws, which are applicable to AI just as much as they're applicable to anything else. And I think that, you know, that will get us some of the way there, but I think that there will need to also be kind of creative technological solutions, as Pavle mentioned, and then also education of individuals and consumers to help them understand what's happening and give them a better kind of knowledge base, which they can then make more informed decisions about how they want to interact with the systems. Maybe they want to, you know, hide their phone all day while they're working. Maybe they want to turn off all of their notifications, whatever it may be.
It ties into.
Levan, can I quickly react on that? So I deliberately did not mention the legislation/regulations because.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, sorry, but there was a question exactly on that of how there are regulations and what do we think about the AI regulation? What extent should it be regulated?
Yeah, let's look at the reality, right? So on the one side, I'm working with the brightest minds I've seen entire my life, right? From the top schools and the self-taught people from all over the world, whether the people, especially people from China and India who are like really far ahead to other countries in terms of like tech development and AI research in particular. As we all know, like China overpassed the US in terms of produce the research papers in the AI. Those people are incredibly smart, and the tools they build are so powerful that in terms of business results, just to give you an idea, for example, our planning, like inventory planning, was increasing 1% every year over the last maybe like 15 years. Before we introduced this deep neural network models that increased the inventory planning efficiency by 15%, like 14.5%, right? And that kind of results don't come easily. And like not a lot of people understand what goes into those models. And from the legislation side, for them to understand how the models are constructed, they need to hire really, really smart people. I'm not saying that they don't have the smart people. What I'm saying is that they don't have the people with these particular skills, right? How the let's say detailed page is constructed, how the Facebook feed is constructed, what you should eliminate and what you should lead. It requires extreme knowledge of those models. And because government will never compete, like will never ever compete with the tech companies in terms of paying those people, like who's going to work for a government at the fraction of a salary, try to go against, like maybe somebody will, but not at a scale, right? And the reality is that here you have the smartest people try to achieve their business objectives. And here you have the government and legislators who will never have the people with the skills just to understand what these guys are doing. And how are you going, like either you're bluntly regulating and saying that, no, you just have to stop whatever you're doing, which is not going to happen, or you have to be smart enough to understand what components you need to regulate there so that companies take less advantage of the people, right? And there are some things that you won't be able to, for example, like overconsumption is a problem, right? Amazon customers overbuy things because they love the experience of waiting for the packages. Is there anything that Amazon's going to do about it? No, like enjoy yourself, like it's a free world. Buy more packages, we'll be happier than ever. And the government will not regulate it. Like we as individuals have to figure out, like, do I need another coffee maker? Probably not. Like, would I stop buying coffee maker if I have an app on my phone? I probably won't, because there will be a great Prime deal coming up in 20 seconds, and I will buy as many things as possible because prices will be half. Right? Do I need them? Again, probably. Okay. On the individual level, is more powerful than governments trying to regulate, and at a larger level, this decentralized AI should probably solve a lot of problems.
No, but it's very interesting. I mean, it makes us think how, with this development, how we have to make sure that there are mechanisms that protect the individuals. Thank you very much, I mean, for that insight. I know we're over the time, but let me just ask maybe another question. I think it's going to be interesting for our attendees, especially our colleagues from different countries. You know, within this digital transformation, I mean, do you see AI as an effective tool for ensuring transparency and efficiency of the governance, and for the governments to integrate AI into their processes? So it would be interesting to hear from you what your thoughts are on that, since you are the experts. Anyone?
Like short answer, yes. Definitely, because it is ensuring transparency, it is ensuring the efficiency, because on the one hand, it is simplifying the processes, it is ensuring, it is kind of shortening the time period of the processes and services internally in the government. And definitely AI is a crucial part of meeting the kind of challenges which is in our century, especially during the pandemic challenge. So shortly, definitely, and I hope that government of Georgia will be taking this leadership to kind of make the showcase of Georgia, how efficiently AI can be integrated in e-governance in Georgia.
I mean, that's very interesting. I think that you know, creating that legislative environment for that to happen, for the transformation to happen within the government services, I think it's very important. I know that Georgia's been working on e-governance, and I don't know how much AI is used in that, but definitely it has been very effective. Mark, I wanted to ask if there are any examples. You work with a lot of countries, and if you see where the benefits outweigh the risks of implementing or integrating AI in the government processes.
Sure, yeah. And unfortunately, I have to go in just a minute. So I'll
sorry, I know you have a flight. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, it's no problem. I'll give my last answer and also just thank all of you for such a rich discussion. But I think that, no, we have seen a lot of cases of small countries, really by virtue of being small, being able to be nimble and agile and lead the way. We've done a lot of work with the governments in New Zealand, Finland, Denmark, Rwanda, for example. Estonia is well known also for their leadership here. And one of the things that, that we've seen, and this is to the last question as well, one thing that governments can do that's relatively easy and that can have outsized impacts is to actually make some of their own government data publicly available and create better repositories for data, obviously non-sensitive, non-private data on citizens, and then also APIs, which can then be used by developers to use that data to build applications that can be beneficial to citizens, that can be good business opportunities, and that can also encourage some of this entrepreneurial spirit and skill building that we've been discussing in this call. So I think that the smaller countries that we've seen really succeed are the ones that choose strategically where to invest their efforts, who don't try to do everything, but look at where their existing strengths are in terms of R&D, in terms of workforce skill sets, in terms of industry sectors, and then really focus their AI efforts there. But I think that it is very important also that in the process, governments themselves digitalize and they modernize and they think about how they can either use AI themselves, ideally, but even if not that, make available some of the data and create an enabling environment so that others can use AI to help improve service delivery and other aspects of how citizens get services from government.
Thank you very much, Mark. And we won't hold it against you, please. I know that you have to get on the flight, so thank you very much for your time. I'm sure that we will continue this discussion. As I understand, there's so many topics that we can go on and on forever, but I realize everyone's time is limited. So thank you again, Mark, for your contribution and for participating here. Looking forward to working with you. Bye. All right, I guess I think we do have to finish. We went over about 25 minutes over our time. I think that, with Irakli talking about strengthening the innovation and technology ecosystem, I think that's the right step for Georgia, and integrating these best practices from around the world. I think it's going to be crucial for Georgia and for many other countries. So I think that instead of competing with each other, I think a lot of our partners have to work together to make these processes more effective within the country and increase the development of technology and AI within our countries. Again, if there are any closing remarks that any of you want to add, please go ahead. But if not, then we can definitely conclude. I think this was a very interesting discussion, and again, thank you so very much for participating in this webinar. I think it went successful enough that we can say that we should hold this every month. So thank you very much. Ambassador, I see you were here throughout the whole time and listening to us. So thank you very much. We really appreciate that. And like I said, the invitation stands when you're visiting California. Please, we would love to host you at the consulate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Levan. We should be together in this race to achieve way better results. So thank you for all your commitments, and looking forward to working with you closely.
Thank you, colleagues. The discussion was really fruitful, and the insights from colleagues, from Mark and Paule, really makes sense for us that we are on the right track in this direction in terms of innovations and in every next and first steps that we're going to take in terms of artificial intelligence. And I believe and hope that that the valuable time will be in other occasions also available for for sharing their experience and thoughts about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Levan.
Bye, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.